Welcome to the Mystery and History channel. Be sure to subscribe and like so you don't miss out on more videos like this one. In the winter of 1890 to 1891, Casey's scouts moved through the snow after returning from operations at Wounded Knee, South Dakota. The mounted group took part in the military campaign linked to the clash of December 29, 1890, near the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in the western part of the state. Recorded in 1892 at Michigan Carbon Works in Rougeville, Michigan, this pile held thousands of bison bone parts sent for industrial processing. The material was turned into glue, fertilizer, pigments, and bone char after decades of exploitation that sharply reduced the herds of the plains. In 1878, Dodge City, Kansas, became one of the biggest centers of the buffalo hide trade in the Wild West. The photograph records a pile of about 40,000 hides gathered after hunts on the Great Plains. The activity supplied the market and sharply reduced the herds in just a few years. Photographed in 1856 after returning to Fort Yuma, Olive Oatman displayed traditional Mojave markings on her chin. Separated from her family in 1851 in what is now Arizona, she first stayed with a Yavapai group and later with the Mojave. Her portrait became one of the best-known records of westward expansion in North America. After George Parrott died on March 22, 1881, in Rawlins, Wyoming, Dr. John Osborne made a mold of his face and ordered objects made from materials taken from his body. Known as Big Nose George, Parrott had been convicted of crimes related to robberies and the deaths of 2 law officers. During the Camp Weld Council in Denver, Colorado Territory, Cheyenne and Arapaho leaders met with official representatives on September 28, 1864, to seek peace on the plains. The photograph was taken almost 2 months before the events at Sand Creek, recorded on November 29th of that year. During the Dakota War of 1862 in Minnesota, settler families left their homes and moved to protected areas. The crisis began in August after years of land loss, debt, and lack of supplies among the Dakota people. Thousands of people moved away, and many communities were temporarily empty. In early 1891, near the Pine Ridge Agency in South Dakota, General Nelson Miles and Buffalo Bill looked from a distance at a large Lakota camp on the plains. The scene took place a few weeks after the events in the Wounded Knee region, during a period of delicate negotiations and heavy official movement. In September 1886, in Arizona Territory, Geronimo and other Chiricahua Apaches were photographed in front of the train that would take them to Florida. After surrendering to the United States Army, men, women, and children were sent away as prisoners, far from their homelands in the Southwest. In 1882, in Oregon, Indigenous youths learned blacksmithing in a school workshop run by the United States government. Besides manual work, these institutions required the use of English, new names, clothing, and customs. Many students stayed far from their families and original traditions. During a cattle roundup in Wyoming in 1887, 5 cowboys were photographed by John Gravel while holding a gray wolf with ropes. Ranchers considered these animals a risk to herds, and actions like this were carried out with the goal of protecting cattle on the plains. On September 4, 1908, a major fire struck Rawhide, Nevada, destroying much of the business district and wooden buildings. Founded in 1906 after discoveries of gold and silver, the town had attracted thousands of residents. The disaster sped up its rapid decline in the following years. In front of a staged backdrop in 1871, William Buffalo Bill Cody poses with horns and elements linked to his earlier work. Before creating his famous show, he worked as a scout and food supplier for workers on the Kansas Pacific Railroad. The portrait helped build his public image in the Wild West. During the Modoc War in 1873, a soldier who needed care was carried on a mule to a camp in Siskiyou County, California. The disputes with United States forces took place between 1872 and 1873 in the border region with Oregon, marked by volcanic terrain. Known as Brazen Bill, William Brazelton carried out at least 9 actions against stagecoaches in Arizona and New Mexico during 1877 and 1878. After being located by Sheriff Charles Scheibel's team near Tucson, he died during the authorities' intervention on August 22, 1878. Around 1900 in Circle City, Alaska, members of the emergency team posed in front of the station with a wagon equipped with buckets and other materials. Since the town had wooden buildings, the group depended on manual work and quick response to contain incidents and protect the community. Led by the Marshal of Enterprise, Kansas, Carrie Nation was in custody on January 23, 1895. The activist had taken part in an action against an establishment with other supporters of alcohol prohibition. Known for carrying a small tool, she was detained several times during her campaign. After the Slim Buttes episode in September 1876, in Dakota Territory, a man who needed care is carried in a makeshift support fastened between 2 horses. With no nearby medical posts, groups depended on simple resources to move people through isolated areas to temporary medical facilities. Late in the afternoon of February 20, 1894, a wide sandstorm moved over Midland, Texas, covering houses, fences, and windmills with a thick cloud of dust. The record shows how strong winds and dry soil could quickly reduce visibility and interrupt activity on the plains of the Wild West. On May 30, 1899, near Globe in Arizona Territory, Pearl Hart and Joe Boot intercepted a stagecoach in one of the last cases of that kind in the region. Detained days later, she gained national fame, was featured by Cosmopolitan magazine, and was eventually sent to a territorial institution in Yuma, Arizona. Known as Rose of Cimarron, Rose Dunn was almost 15 years old when the Ingalls episode took place on September 1, 1893, in Oklahoma Territory. Connected to George Newcomb, she became famous for the story that she crossed the tense area to bring him equipment and supplies during the action. On December 27, 1900, the bar of the Carey Hotel in Wichita, Kansas, was photographed after a Carey Nation protest against the illegal sale of alcoholic drinks. During the action, objects and part of the decoration were damaged. The Prohibition campaign made her name known across the country the following year. Carved around 1881 into a rock wall in Clifton, Arizona Territory, this small jail had cells open directly into the cliff. According to local tradition, the worker hired to finish the job ended up becoming its first occupant after being arrested over a dispute in town. Photographed in 1887 by Ben Whittick, Geronimo appears kneeling with a rifle. A Chiricahua leader, he led Apache groups during conflicts in Arizona and New Mexico. After his surrender in September 1886, he was sent away as a prisoner far from his lands in the American Southwest. After the fire of May 1882, the OK Corral appears partly damaged in Tombstone, Arizona Territory. The site had become famous for the episode of October 26, 1881, involving the Earp brothers, Doc Holliday, and members of the group known as the Cowboys. The action lasted less than 1 minute. During the Black Hills expedition in 1874, George Armstrong Custer, William Ludlow, the scout known as Bloody Knife, and soldier John Noonan posed beside a grizzly bear obtained during the trip. The mission also mapped the region and confirmed reports of gold, increasing the arrival of explorers. On September 16, 1893, thousands of settlers set out on horseback and in wagons during the land run for the Cherokee Outlet in Oklahoma Territory. At the starting signal, they raced for lots newly opened by the United States government, and towns like Perry appeared on the plains within hours. With no confirmed date or city, the photograph records a bear used in a performance in front of a post office and bathhouses in the American West. Guided by a trainer, the animal stands on its hind legs while residents watch. These traveling performances were common in the late 19th century. On an unidentified street in the American West in the late 19th century, a woman appears wearing a long dress, a bonnet, and fabric covering her face. Face veils were used during that period, and in towns with unpaved streets could also help reduce contact with dust, wind, and sun. During the negotiations of 1867 and 1868 at Fort Laramie in Wyoming Territory, General William Tecumseh Sherman and other federal commissioners met with indigenous leaders. The meetings discussed borders, travel routes, military presence, and agreements that would change control of western lands. Recorded in 1893 on the Wyoming plains, this small wooden jail shows the simple structure used in sparsely populated areas of the West. Made with boards and few openings, it held detainees for short periods before transfers or trials in larger towns in the region. Between 1867 and 1868, in the Comstock mines of Nevada, a worker was photographed during ore extraction in an underground tunnel. To overcome the darkness, the photographer used the strong light created by burning magnesium, a rare technique that made it possible to record working conditions inside the mine. In the mining areas of Montana in 1871, workers used powerful streams of water to break down hillsides and separate sediments in search of gold. Hydraulic mining sped up extraction, but removed huge amounts of earth, redirected waterways, and left deep permanent marks on the landscape. Around 1898, in Indian Territory, now Oklahoma, workers extracted coal from a large open pit mine. Men, horses, and wagons worked inside the excavation to remove, load, and carry the material to nearby storage areas. The fuel supplied railroads and growing towns. In June 1905, at the 101 Ranch near Bliss, Oklahoma Territory, members of the Ponca people appear gathered while a bison is prepared. The event combined ranch activities with public demonstrations organized for visitors and helped launch the show that would make the property known. At the bottom of Deadwood Gulch in Dakota Territory, cabins, tents, and workshops were taking shape in 1876 after gold was discovered in the Black Hills. The rapid arrival of prospectors and merchants turned the valley into a mining center with streets and homes built in just a few weeks. Almost everything was made of wood. In 1876, Deadwood in Dakota Territory grew quickly after gold was discovered in the Black Hills. The photograph records a street lined with cabins, workshops, and wooden stores built in a hurry to receive thousands of prospectors. The camp soon became a busy Wild West town. On July 4, 1907, about 20,000 people filled the streets of Goldfield, Nevada to watch a rock drilling competition. Pairs of miners competed in speed and endurance using hammers and hand drills in an event tied to the height of gold mining in the local town. Around 1900 in Langtree, Texas, Justice of the Peace, Roy Bean held trials on the porch of his place, called the Jersey Lily. The building served at the same time as a courtroom, saloon, and gathering spot. Known as the Law west of the Pecos, Bean judged local cases with very informal methods. Along Main Street in Deadwood, Dakota Territory, residents and merchants appear in front of banks, stores, and offices in 1877. The town had grown quickly with the Black Hills Gold Rush, turning dirt streets into a busy commercial center of the local Wild West. Gathered in Texas in the late 19th century, these members of the Texas Rangers pose with clothing and equipment used in frontier service. Created by Stephen Austin in 1823 and formalized in 1835, the force patrolled distant areas, protected settlements, and supported local authorities in keeping order. In 1885, at Fort Bayard in New Mexico Territory, members of the 6th Cavalry trained horses to stay lying down during field exercises. The men practiced movements in a low position, using the animals for cover while officers watched the activity carried out on open ground. Around 1880, William Allen Pinkerton appears seated between railroad agents Pat Connell on the left and Sam Finley on the right. Connected to the Pinkerton Agency, they protected trains, cargo, and passengers, while also investigating incidents and searching for persons of interest along United States railroads. Born as Henry McCarty in 1859, Billy the Kid became known in New Mexico Territory during the Lincoln County conflicts. Also using the name William H. Bonney, he took part in actions involving cattle, escaped custody on April 28, 1881, and died near Fort Sumner on July 14th of that year. In 1890, in Silverton, Colorado, a stagecoach crossed a raised log bridge over a mountain gorge. Pulled by horses, the vehicle carried passengers, mail, and supplies along narrow routes. Structures like this were vital for connecting mining areas to nearby settlements in the region. Elected sheriff of Lincoln County in November 1880, Pat Garrett detained Billy the Kid on December 23rd near Stinking Springs. After Billy left custody on April 28, 1881, Garrett found him at Pete Maxwell's house in Fort Sumner, where Billy died on the night of July 14th of that year. A member of the James Younger group, Bob Younger, took part with his brothers Cole and Jim in actions against banks, trains, and stagecoaches in the American Midwest. On September 7, 1876, he was detained after the failed attempt in Northfield, Minnesota, and remained in custody until he died in 1889. On June 10, 1883, in Dodge City, Kansas, Wyatt Earp, Bat Masterson, Luke Short, and 5 other men posed for the photograph known as the Peace Commission. The group had gathered during a political dispute between business owners, which ended peacefully with the reopening of the Long Branch. Shortly before she died, in 1903, Calamity Jane was photographed beside the memorial of Wild Bill Hickok at Mount Moriah Cemetery in Deadwood, South Dakota. Hickok had lost his life in the town on August 2, 1876. Jane died on August 1, 1903, and was placed beside him by the decision of local residents. Near Whitewood in Dakota Territory, soldiers from George Crook's expedition set up this camp in September 1876. During the Long March, wagon frames became shelters, while the lack of supplies, mud, cold, and exhaustion made it harder for men and animals to move forward. During the Starvation March in September 1876, in the Black Hills of Dakota Territory, 2 men fastened sacks of flour to a mule. The food was being carried to George Crook's group, which faced a severe shortage of supplies, long distances, and few resupply points during the local mobilization. Between 1887 and 1889, at John Doyle's ranch in Arizona Territory, 2 people practiced target shooting from a wagon in front of a wooden cabin. Recorded by photographer Ames, the scene shows a recreational activity common on rural and isolated properties in the American West at that time. Under the heat of Arizona Territory in 1886, workers manually dug a long irrigation canal using shovels and pickaxes. The project would carry water to dry areas, supporting crops, livestock, and settlements. Without heavy machines, each stretch depended on steady effort and group labor. Recorded in 1906 in Del Rio, Texas, the photograph known as A True Girl of the West shows a young woman wearing a hat, scarf, belt, and clothing associated with frontier life. The portrait shows how elements of cowboy clothing were also worn by women in the early 20th century. Near Deadwood, South Dakota, members of the Corps of Engineers and visitors took a break at camp in 1889. 15 people appear in front of a tent, some with musical instruments and measuring devices, while 2 deer stand with the group. The record was made by John Grabble. In 1897, on the roads of Arizona Territory, long animal teams pulled heavy wagons loaded with ore. The convoy connected extraction areas to processing centers and railroad stations, facing heavy dust, rough terrain, and slow trips through isolated parts of the West. On December 7, 1907, a crowd filled the railroad station in Tonopah, Nevada, in front of a Tonopah and Goldfield Railroad train. The line carried passengers, workers, goods, and silver ore, connecting the mining town to other centers and supporting its rapid growth. On the Great Plains in the late 19th century, Pawnee families appear in front of large circular homes covered with earth and vegetation. Known as earth lodges, these structures protected against heat and cold, housed several people, and served for social life, ceremonies, and storage. In front of the post office in Nome, Alaska, a crowd waited for mail around 1900 during the gold rush. The city had grown quickly after the discoveries of 1898, and postal service was essential for receiving letters, newspapers, money, and news from distant family members in the region. During the Klondike Gold Rush in 1897, 4 prospectors posed on a trail in Alaska with heavy clothing, blankets, and supplies strapped to their backs. They traveled through forests and mountain passes toward the Yukon goldfields, facing mud, cold, isolation, and long journeys on foot. Between 1898 and 1905, in the mountains of Colorado, a miner's cabin appears almost buried in snow. Buildings like this sheltered workers from gold and silver mines during harsh winters, when storms isolated camps, blocked trails, and made it hard to transport food and firewood. In 1890, a stagecoach known as the Deadwood Stage traveled along a mountain road in the Black Hills of South Dakota, carrying passengers, mail, and supplies to mining areas. 6 horses pulled the vehicle through steep turns and narrow paths in the mining region. On May 10, 1869, at Promontory Summit in Utah Territory, workers and guests watched the joining of the Union Pacific and Central Pacific Railroads. The placement of the final rail connected the eastern and western United States, shortened travel, and sped up transportation across the country on one continuous route. Inside a ranch in Fremont County, Idaho Territory, men appear gathered in 1872 in front of a fireplace. Rifles, tools, and harnesses hang on the walls, ready for hunting, defense, and work. In isolated areas, these objects were part of daily life and gave residents greater independence. In 1868, in the Nevada desert, this camp appeared at the point where the railroad tracks still ended. Tents, rail cars, animals, and workers filled the area while new sections were being built. These mobile sites moved forward with the work and served as temporary bases for crews and supplies. At the end of the Union Pacific tracks, between 1868 and 1869, wagons waited for a construction train photographed by Andrew Russell to be unloaded. Materials and supplies went from there by road to the crews building the railroad toward Promontory Summit, connecting isolated areas of the American West. After the land opening on September 16, 1893, Perry in Oklahoma Territory received thousands of settlers in just a few hours. The area, called Hell's Half Acre, gathered tents, wagons, saloons, and makeshift stores, quickly forming a commercial center before permanent streets and buildings were constructed. A few days after the land run of September 16, 1893, the Wild West Hotel was operating on Calamity Avenue in Perry, Oklahoma Territory. The makeshift lodging used tents, outdoor beds, and a wagon serving settlers while the new town streets and buildings were being built. In the high areas of Arizona Territory, soldiers installed a heliograph station in 1886 that could send messages through reflections of the sun. The network included 23 posts in Arizona and New Mexico, separated by about 25 miles, and supported military communications in the region. During an expedition in 1874 on the plains of Dakota Territory, cavalry, wagons, and pack animals moved forward in a long column. The group carried soldiers, food, weapons, and equipment, facing great distances, open land, and few supply points along the route. Near the border with Mexico in 1883, government packers organized a large mule train to cross the dry terrain. The animals carried food, tools, clothing, and other supplies to distant posts, making them essential where wagons could not move along the region's trails. Around 1885, in Arizona Territory, horse-drawn wagons crossed the waters of the Gila River without the help of bridges. These crossings required care with the current, depth, and uneven ground, but they were essential for carrying people, goods, and supplies between isolated settlements. Around 1869, a Concord stagecoach stopped in front of a station on the overland routes of the West. Passengers, cargo, and mail traveled inside, while armed guards rode on the roof of the vehicle. This transportation connected distant towns before the full expansion of the railroads. Around 1872, on the Aquarius Plateau in Utah, a photographer prepares large glass negatives in an isolated camp. The process required carrying cameras, chemicals, and fragile plates by horse, as well as setting up a temporary laboratory to record remote Wild West landscapes in the region. During an expedition in 1868 in Idaho Territory, a surveyor works near the edge of a cliff while looking out over the canyon and river below. These professionals measured distances, heights, and routes in remote areas, helping produce maps used in the exploration and settlement of the West. In 1870, a geological exploration team takes a lunch break at Red Buttes in Wyoming Territory. Gathered beside wagons, instruments, and supplies, the members faced long journeys through little-known areas to study the land, map routes, and record natural resources. In Kharkiv in the late 19th century, two women appear in a dressing room connected to an urban entertainment house. One of them adjusts a piece of fabric in front of the camera, while the other poses beside a mirror. Corsets, costumes, hairstyles, and lamps reveal details of the setting and the fashion of the period. In the San Juan Mountains of Colorado, miners set up a camp in 1875 with tents and simple shelters on high ground. The place was used for rest, cooking, and tool storage, while workers faced isolation, cold, and difficult paths to the mines. Between 1870 and 1890, workers operated at the Greyhound Lode Mine in Cheyenne Mountain, Colorado, extracting galena associated with silver. The excavation was reinforced with large logs to prevent collapses, while men removed ore by hand with shovels, pickaxes, and simple containers at the site. Led by the Marshal of Enterprise, Kansas, Carrie Nation was in custody on January 23, 1895. The activist had taken part in an action against an establishment with other supporters of alcohol prohibition. Known for carrying a small tool, she was detained several times during her campaign. After joining the Dalton Group, Bill Doolin formed the Wild Bunch in the early 1890s, leading actions against banks, trains, and stagecoaches in Oklahoma Territory and nearby states. Wanted for years, he was located by federal authorities near Lawson and died during an action on August 24, 1896. Around 1900, at the Orient in Bisbee, Arizona Territory, men gathered for faro games, one of the most popular card games in the Wild West. The tables drew miners and travelers, making these places important centers of entertainment, rest, and local social life. Born on August 13, 1860 in Ohio, Annie Oakley began getting food at a young age to help support her family. Her accuracy in shooting competitions brought her to Buffalo Bill shows, where she became one of the best-known performers of the Wild West and gave international performances. Around the teepees, around 1882, a Sioux family appears in a camp on the Great Plains of Dakota Territory. These homes could be taken down and moved easily, following movements tied to hunting, horses, and the community's daily activities throughout the year. In 1903, in the American Southwest, Edward S. Curtis photographed two Apache women seated beside a campfire. A metal pot appears over the coals, showing food preparation. Blankets and traditional clothing helped deal with the cold and were part of everyday life in the camps. In 1886, on the Nebraska plains, a settler family poses in front of the covered wagon used during their search for land. The vehicle carried people, food, tools, and personal belongings, while also serving as temporary shelter until a house was built and farming began on the property. In the routine of Fort Apache in Arizona Territory, Apache workers delivered large loads of hay in 1893. The material fed horses and mules used for transportation and local patrols. Cutting, gathering, and taking the hay to the post required constant effort and many trips with pack animals. In front of the headquarters of the Aztec Land and Cattle Company in Holbrook, Arizona Territory, cowboys pose with horses and work equipment in the late 19th century. The company controlled large herds and wide grazing lands, requiring long days to drive, watch, and brand local cattle. On the grazing lands of the 101 Ranch south of Hunnewell, Kansas, cowboys gathered cattle between 1870 and 1899 to count, separate, and brand the animals. On horseback, they crossed wide open areas, driving the herd before transport to markets and railroad stations in the region on long trips. Around 1885, near Douglas in Arizona Territory, 6 cowboys employed by John Slaughter posed with work clothing and equipment. At the San Bernardino Ranch, they drove, watched, and branded large herds, while also covering long distances across the grazing lands of the local border region. Around 1885, at Fort Bayard in New Mexico Territory, riders carried out exercises with horses used for transportation, patrols, and cattle work. The training helped men and animals face long distances, rough terrain, and essential tasks of life on the western frontier. On Arizona ranches, cowboys gathered the herd to mark each animal with its owner's brand. In this late 19th century scene, a calf is held on the ground while the branding equipment is prepared. The practice helped identify loose cattle and reduce property disputes on the open range. Between 1890 and 1894, soldiers and workers gathered in the Fort Keogh Canteen in Montana to eat, drink, and talk after duty. The tight space, with a counter, tables, and simple decoration, shows how these places served as the main social spots at frontier military posts. In 1877, at Fort Rawlins in Wyoming Territory, 2 men, a woman, and a baby appear in front of a dwelling made with wood, fabric, and available materials. The structure served as temporary housing and shows how families lived with few resources at isolated posts in the local Wild West. Around 1895, in Yosemite Valley, California, 2 men appear in front of Galen Clark's cabin, considered one of the first permanent buildings in the region. Made with large logs, it served as shelter and a support point when the valley still received few visitors and local residents. Among wagons and tables set up in Military Plaza in San Antonio, Texas, sellers and buyers took part in an open-air market in 1887. Fruits, vegetables, and other goods were traded in the city center, where daily commerce brought together residents, farmers, and travelers from the region at that time. In the 1860s in Japan, 3 archers were photographed during a traditional archery practice. They used long asymmetrical bows and clothing from the period. The activity, linked to Japanese martial schools, required control of posture, accuracy, focus, and discipline with every shot. If you enjoyed this video and want to support the channel, please use the Super Thanks tool below. Your contribution helps us keep bringing you amazing historical content. Thank you so much for your support, and see you in the next video.